Counselor, your opening statement, sir. Hey, how you doing? Vincent LaGuardia Gambini. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it so happens that earlier this year, my clients have indeed entered the sack of swords. They went in, got the groceries, and left. But they did not shoot the clerk. That happens to be a coincidence. They just got up and left. When they were arrested, they had no idea why. They were caught completely by surprise. They thought that they were arrested for shoplifting a can of tuna, which wasn't even their intention. You see, they're just two youths. They didn't think to get a shopping cart or a shopping basket. They just picked up all the groceries, carried them all by hand, and then they took her to the counter, paid for the groceries, and left Jimmy Willis untouched when they left. Somebody else must have killed Jimmy Willis because my clients did not do that. We intend to prove it. Now about the tuna fish. Them carrying the groceries with their hands is why the tuna fish happened. Because my client Bill, who you might have guessed is related to me, yes, he's my cousin. We're both Gambinis. He put the tuna fish in his pocket because he needed more carrying space. He fully intended to take it back out to pay for it, but he completely forgot to. You see, later in the car, Bill pulled the tuna fish after he felt it in his pocket, realizing he forgot to pay for it. And just minutes later, there was a cop behind them. They stayed calm because he knew, or at least he thought, it wasn't going to be a big deal. They would just have to pay back the clerk or go through some simple procedure and make it as smooth as possible. But then the cop pulled out a shotgun and pointed right at his head and his friend Stan's head. They thought that was normal around here because we come from New York. We grew up thinking that the laws are medieval down here. So they were arrested and they thought it was normal down here for shoplifting a can of tuna. It turns out Jimmy Willis was murdered a mere minutes later. We intend to prove that. We intend to prove that it was mere minutes after they left the sack of swords. Not while they're there, and not by them. And when Sheriff Farley did his initial questioning to Bill, he asked him what his backstory was. These are two youths coming from Brooklyn, and they just got scholarships to UCLA. They were driving across the country to get there, and they thought they'd take the scenic route because they had plenty of time to do that. They wanted to check out the beautiful South. So they got into Alabama and unfortunately stopped at the sack of swords. And here they are. Nothing was planned as far as what happened. Not even the tuna fish. Let alone somebody coming in, shooting the clerk and robbing him. Which I, again, intend to prove that it wasn't my client's doing. As you know, my clients plead not guilty. I understand the evidence to them is strong, but there's always holes in the evidence. Building a case is like building blocks. Each piece of evidence is a little brick to build the building. But this whole case is an illusion. They're nothing but thin cards. They have to be because my client is innocent. They didn't even know a gunshot happened because they were far away from the vicinity by the time it happened, so they couldn't even hear a gunshot. You may even have heard that Stan, while they were standing in line to get their mug shots taken, he said, and I quote, "Ridiculous, all this for a can of tuna." Now you might argue that he's saying that to cover it up. But I, from what Bill told me at least, understand that he is not a good liar. And not a good arguer. And Bill's seen Stan's parents and says that they argue, but they're a bunch of amateurs. Us Gambinis, we love to argue. We live to argue. It's deeply in our DNA. And going back to when Sheriff Farley was questioning Bill and Stan, he asked Bill about the story of what went down. He asked him, "You paid for the groceries, and then what?" Bill said, "And then we got out and left." And then the sheriff said, "When'd you shoot him?" That caught Bill off guard because he had no idea that this was about murder. Again, he thought it was about shoplifting. So, while he was caught off guard, he said, "I shot the clerk." And the sheriff testified that he said that as if it were a statement, a confession. It was not a confession. It was a question. It was a question. You're saying I shot the clerk? I shot the clerk? Again, he repeated it in the form of a question. But he didn't shoot the clerk. Again, he was being caught off guard. So, in conclusion, to conclude my opening statement, everything that guy just said is bullshit. Thank you.